this idea that we're integrated, coherent individuals who are inside our bodies, somehow operating it almost like a puppet master with kind of coherent thoughts and processes. I'm going to claim that that sense of the self is not what it seems to most of us. So what do you mean by the self? Well, if I was to say to you, do you like vanilla or do you like chocolate ice cream? You have a sense of the self of hearing a question, contemplating an answer, and then formulating some response. Now that's the sense of the self in conscious moment awareness. That's what William James would call the I sense of the self. But of course, to answer that question, you have to draw upon all the experiences that you've had, when you've last eaten ice cream. And that, of course, is a legacy of all the experiences and influences and past events. And if I was to meet you in the bar and say, tell me about yourself, you would say, well, I was born wherever, and I have this as a job, and this is what I do, and this is what I want to do for the future. These are all sorts of bits of information, which are what we call the personal identity of self. So William James called that the me. So both the I and the me are facets of the self, but I think they're both constructed by the brain. I'm not denying people have events and experiences, of course, but I would argue that the brain abstracts these and weaves these together into a coherence, a coherent characterization of identity. And certainly the idea that it's an illusion, that doesn't mean it's not real. An illusion means that it's not what it seems. And we should be wary. I'm not denying you're having an experience. What I'm trying to say is that the experience of the self is very different. And we should be reminded by this from a classic film, if you pop that up there. I'm sure most of the geeks in this audience will well recognize this masterpiece of science fiction. No slides, nothing? You haven't? Oh, that's a shame. You missed the soundtrack as well. Oh, I went to all that effort. Never mind. Shall I do it again? It's a pretty cool soundtrack. Okay, here we go. Let's try again. Yeah, cool. There's lots of leather and dark glasses. It was always going to be a winner, wasn't it? Now, the thing about Neo is, of course, he thinks that he's a computer programmer, but we know that he, like the rest of the civilization, has been enslaved by the sentient computers to harvest them for their biochemical energy. And the way they keep them enslaved is they feed directly into their brains a simulation, this matrix, so that they never know. Now, of course, it's science fiction, but the principle that if you could ever control the working of the brain, then you would effectively control the mind is one which I think is worth exploring. Because I have to think that we're not living in the matrix as such, but we are simulating the external world the whole time. And I also think we're simulating an internal character to interact with that world. So for example, at the moment you've got this very rich experience of seeing me waving my hands, and you've got all this detail of this amazing visual field, but in fact you're only processing a small part of it. You're only really processing the central part of your visual field. It's colorblind and smeared in the periphery of your vision. You've got two black holes, which correspond to the blind spots. Portions of the retina where there are no photoreceptors, and yet your brain fills that in all the time, very reliably. You just would never know. Now, of course, you can move your eyes all the time to look around and investigate the world, but every time you move your eyes, your visual scene is literally blanking off. You're actually blind every time you move your eyes. If you don't believe me, go to the restroom after the talk and have a look in the mirror and then stare at your left eye and then your right eye and then your left eye, and you can't see your own eye movements. You're effectively blind for 2.5 hours of every waking day. But you would never know that because your brain creates this simulation. It's all filled in. It all just seems rich, continuous, and coherent. But that's not true. Now, I also